So, Patrick and Alex, thanks.
Thanks so much for inviting us here today. We're really excited to share with you our experience of running an FND inpatient programme in Bristol. So we're from the Rosa Burden Centre, and the origins of the Rosa Burden began way back in 1909 with a very rich history of pioneering neurological research and treatment. In 2000, it moved from Stoke Park to Frenchay Hospital with a 17-bed specialist neuropsychiatry unit. And this included a 6-week programme for the treatment of somatic symptom disorder. In 2014, it relocated again to Southmead Hospital and opened a 12-bedded unit. And Rosa Burden is now a tertiary centre covering the southwest of England. And our patients come from Gloucestershire right down to Cornwall. Since moving to Southmead Hospital, we've made significant changes to the programme. Now our patients come in for a 3-week elective admission, and we have 5 FND patients per cohort. We're a multidisciplinary-led team, and we're made up of neuropsychiatrists, specialty doctors, and an F1. We have nursing staff that are a mixture of general, mental health, and LD trained. We have OTs and physios that are ward-based and can refer out to speech and language therapy as required. We also have music and art therapy students and currently have a psychology vacancy. So if there are any psychologists out there that fancy a change, you can come and find us in the bar after. The programme is made up of group work, one-to-one sessions, self-directed practice, study and reflection. So next we're going to have a look at our referral process. Once patients have a diagnosis of FND, they can then be referred into our outpatient functional neurology clinic. And here, doctors will confirm diagnosis of FND, go through formulation, and screen for any psychiatric comorbidities. They can then be referred into our outpatient therapy clinics, or straight onto the waiting list for the 3-week inpatient programme. And you can see that there's some fluidity between that. Bringing patients onto the programme requires careful, multifactorial decision-making, and we broadly work on these following principles. Patients must have a confirmed diagnosis of FND. Symptoms are impacting on many aspects of life. Local therapy services have been unable or are unlikely to be able to meet their needs. And the patient is able to demonstrate motivation to engage with the FND programme and has a set of aims and goals for the admission. In terms of referral exclusion criteria, it's important to recognise that symptom severity may affect a patient's ability to participate. We need to consider how they will engage and cope with a 3-week inpatient programme, and some may need life circumstances to settle first or require more of a therapeutic workup in an outpatient setting. This may involve some stabilising work before admission, which is often referred to as prehabilitation. Sometimes functional neurological symptoms occur mainly from other underlying conditions, meaning that the primary problem is something other than FND. Some examples may be CFS-ME or pain, and if those conditions are causing specific sensitisation, then it's likely that it will be more beneficial for the patient to have that primary problem treated first. A patient must have a discharge destination when coming onto the programme. We like patients to go back to stability where possible, and patients needing discharge planning, in particular finding alternative places to live, can be a particular drain on resources, meaning that some people may not be able to access the next cohort.
So throughout the programme, we use a shared multidisciplinary model of FND symptoms, explored and applied by all disciplines in sessions. This frames FND as a threat response from the nervous system, involving a combination of fight, flight, freeze, flop or dissociate, and changes in attention, driven by threat perception from one or more areas. So things like thoughts and higher cognitive function, like worries, loss of control or uncertainty, internal body signals such as lack of sleep, infection, lack of routine, too much or too little activity, inadequate nutrition or hydration, lack of connection with people, pets, nature, ourselves, our bodies, or meaningful enjoyable activities, and experiential memory, those things the nervous system has learned from experience are dangerous. This is further perpetuated by various difficulties responding to interoceptive signals, often allowing the threat response to continue unchecked.
So let's take a closer look at the structure of the 3 weeks. In the first week, we carry out assessments. Patients receive a basic workbook. We have a weekly ward round where patients get to meet the team and discuss their goals and progress. We run an FND education group in which we simplify the model that Pat just spoke of. We define FND and discuss symptoms and formulation. In our mindfulness groups, patients learn how mindfulness enhances interoception and helps balance attention to internal states. Strategies like check-ins and body scanning are introduced here. We offer a physio-led gait re-education group and nurse-led mindfulness and self-compassion activities. And these give patients a chance to bond and share experiences, which they report finding highly beneficial. Patients offered one-to-one sessions with a named nurse, and we find this especially meaningful as patients often find that nurses become a confidant, and this can really improve their feeling of safety during their admission. In week 2, OTs lead a fatigue management group and focus on pacing, planning, and the importance of routine. And these are key concepts that are used throughout treatment to manage all symptoms. During the second week, it's encouraged for patients to go on weekend leave. We know that coming onto the programme takes people away from the normal stresses of life, and we feel it's important for patients to go home and be able to practice putting those strategies that they've learned into a more contextual environment. In week 3, one-to-ones encompass a review of the weekend leave, and we continue working towards patient goals. Patients are supported with a self-management plan, which they can take home with them and refer to in future. And then this week we have FND Friends visit, and FND Friends are a local support group that outreach onto the ward. They will have a general catch-up with patients and chat about their experiences of the programme, and they can signpost to support that's available within their local areas. At the end of the 3rd week, patients are discharged. Some have an appointment with their referring doctor if required, and all patients are offered an appointment in the outpatient OT or physio clinic at around 3 to 4 months.
So throughout these 3 weeks, we try to weave a number of different key themes through every interaction. These could be thought of as the who, why, what, and how of managing the symptoms. So who? The programme focuses on working towards self-management at all points. Why? All interventions link back to formulation and mechanism to improve understanding of why these symptoms might be happening and why the strategies can be helpful. And what? Overall, we're aiming to achieve more regulation in the nervous system. We then have the how. So we look at mindful awareness, particularly of interoception. We tend to do everything in the context of pacing and graded exposure. And we look at setting and communicating effective boundaries, as well as trying to help patients foster self-compassion and acceptance.
So now we're going to focus on outcome measures, and these are the measures that we're currently using to track progress and effectiveness of treatment. The Canadian Occupational Performance Measure, or the COPM, assesses a person's performance and satisfaction in daily activities. This is achieved through a short interview where they identify important but challenging occupations. It's administered at the start and at the end of the programme, with patients rating performance and satisfaction out of 10 in up to 5 ADLs. A total score with an increase of 2 or more is considered clinically significant. So here we have a sample of data that demonstrates 22 pre- and post-COPM scores. And you can see that 21 out of 22 patients reported improvement in overall performance. 50% of patients' performance rating improved by greater than 2. 73% of patients' satisfaction rating improved by greater than 2. And 100% of patients reported improvement in satisfaction levels overall.
We've recently started routinely using the MIA 2 at the start and end of the 3 weeks. It's a self-reported questionnaire that looks at 8 subscales of interoceptive awareness. While this measure doesn't necessarily directly relate to measuring improvement in symptoms, the programme places a heavy emphasis on improving interoception, so I feel this has been helpful to measure whether we are making any changes with this. This 22-person sample demonstrates mean overall improvements in all subscales between admission and discharge, with particular improvements in self-regulation, body listening, and trusting the body signals. In addition to measuring effectiveness of the interoceptive interventions we do, the MIA 2 has been a hugely helpful assessment tool for which interventions to target, and completing the form often seems to work well as an intervention itself. We also do the EQ5D5L as a service level outcome measure. This is a self-report survey that measures quality of life across 5 domains with 5 levels of severity. It looks at mobility, self-care, so how well people manage to wash and dress themselves, usual activities like work, leisure or family life, pain and discomfort, and anxiety and depression. It also contains a visual analogue scale of overall health from 0 to 100. We routinely measure this at admission and discharge from the inpatient programme, but not yet routinely at follow-up. This is a sample of 30 patients followed up at 6 to 12 months post-discharge. As you can see, the green bar shows the percentage of patients that reported improvements in each dimension, from original admission to follow-up. The orange, those that remained the same, and the red, those that reported a worse score. As you can see, on the face of things, the results don't look amazing, with similar levels of mobility reported and overall predominantly worsening of self-care, pain, and overall health. On the other hand, despite these domains worsening, there seems to be a trend to an overall improvement in engagement with usual activities and an improvement in anxiety and depression. It should also be noted that there may be some limitations with the EQ5D as a measure of effectiveness of the programme. So an example from this study may be helpful in illustrating this. At follow-up, this patient's EQ5D demonstrated only 1 level of improvement in mobility and 1 level of worsening in pain, with a small to moderate change in overall health, suggesting potentially limited effect of the 3-week programme. However, when we asked for some qualitative feedback on what had been helpful, the patient responded, everything. When admitted, he had problems with walking and talking. He was stammering all of the time and staggering all of the time, and had problems with cognitive recall. Now, he has days where he can walk and talk completely normally. He's managing to run his business well, and in his own words, he said that anybody that has the chance to go on the residential stay should do it. It's life-changing. It gave him the skills to manage his symptoms, which has been phenomenal. So this is a very stark contrast between the qualitative and quantitative data. And overall, we do tend to get some fairly good qualitative feedback from the programme as well. Potentially this suggests that the EQ5D5L is not a consistently accurate measure for the effectiveness of an intervention for FND, and we need to look at other ways of measuring this in conjunction with or instead of the EQ5D. Overall, our personal experience is that there are a number of potential benefits, as well as some limitations and potential risks to a short 3-week inpatient admission for FND. In terms of benefits, this includes a cohesive MDT approach that integrates physical, psychological and social factors, allowing for a more holistic, joined-up exploration of symptom management. It allows a more prolonged assessment period that can give valuable insights that would be difficult to gain in a less immersive setting. Patients frequently highlight the value of meeting others with FND, often forming lasting connections, even for those who otherwise aren't interested in FND support groups. It provides the patients a safe space to work and explore their limits, and can overcome certain logistical barriers like difficulty accessing outpatient appointments. It also allows patients to gain experience of a regular routine, which many lack in their normal daily lives. There are also potential limitations compared to an outpatient setting though. So practicing skills and tasks outside of a real-world environment naturally reduces their applicability to the patient's normal situation. It is more expensive than running it on an outpatient basis. Despite all best efforts to manage expectations, because they're coming in for a longer period of time, lots of people come in with high expectations of being cured. And things like work, childcare or dog sitting make the programme unsuitable for some. In terms of potential risks, patient decompensation is one of the things that can be problematic. So if we're taking people away from their own coping strategies that we can't reproduce in the inpatient setting, then we have seen some people whose symptoms have improved, worsened in that setting. The environment can also be potentially triggering, as some people don't find it a safe place to be within a hospital setting. And the risk of symptom contagion is something that we sometimes worry about. But our experience is that happens very irregularly. And then in comparison to a previous 6-week admission, it costs less. We find that patients tend to end up less institutionalised, so it's an easier transition back to home at the end of the 3 weeks than at the end of the 6 weeks. It's allowed them to have quicker access because of shorter waiting lists, and it allows earlier contextual application. So we tend to find that at the end of the 3 weeks, we feel that people are pretty ready to go home and try things in their own environment. So lastly, just looking at what we think is a reasonable expected outcome for a 3-week programme. So we feel that our aim would be to be able to give a framework to understand, manage, control, and where possible improve symptoms and life. The expectation is not that people complete their journey to recovery in 3 weeks, but they can leave with a map, enough tools, and enough support to start. Thank you.